Welcome back. And now for the news in detail. The European Union member states have agreed to extend Brexit until 31st of January next year. In a tweet, European Council President Donald Tusk said the bloc would allow for a so-called flextension. This means that the UK could leave the EU before the deadline if a deal is approved by the Parliament. The Prime Minister had repeatedly said the UK would leave the EU by 31st of October deadline with or without a deal. But the law requires him to accept the EU's extension offer. The British House of Commons will today vote on Prime Minister Boris Johnson's snap election proposal. A day after an American raid killed ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, his likely successor has been killed in northern Syria. SDF commander Mazloom Abdi says Abu Hassan al-Muhajir was killed in a joint raid by Kurdish and the US forces. Witnesses said al-Muhajir was being smuggled in the back of an oil tanker when it was hit by an airstrike in Jarablus. SDF spokesman Mustafa Bali said al-Muhajir was in Jarablus to ease al-Baghdadi's entry to Euphrates Shield area. ISIS is yet to confirm or deny the deaths of Baghdadi and al-Muhajir. Russia says the US has failed to provide reliable information to prove it has killed ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. The Russian Defense Ministry says participants of the operation in Syria gave extremely contradictory accounts of the raid. Meanwhile, the EU has warned al-Baghdadi's killing doesn't mean the fight against ISIS is over. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has endorsed the EU's view. French President Emmanuel Macron also said the death of al-Baghdadi is only a single step and the threat posed by ISIS is far from over. Moscow has issued a travel warning for the US. Russian Ambassador Anatoly Antonov advised Russian citizens to be on their guard during trips to the country. Antonov said the Russian embassy's priority in the US is to protect hundreds of Russians detained in American prisons. He said the Kremlin will ensure their speedy release, irrespective of the position they held. The ambassador also praised Russian diplomats' efforts to secure Maria Butina's release without attracting media attention. Iraqi students have joined ongoing anti-government protests in Baghdad. The development has put further pressure on Prime Minister Adil Abdul Mahdi to resign. Around a dozen schools and universities have been shut down as students march through streets littered with tear gas canisters. 74 people have been killed, while 77 others injured during clashes between protesters and police. The Prime Minister's spokesman warned any further disruption to school schedules would have severe consequences. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has inaugurated Baba Guru Nanak University in Nankana Sahib. This is the second major project for the global Sikh community by Islamabad after the Kartarpur corridor. Addressing the ceremony, the Prime Minister said this university is a tribute to the teachings of the founder of Sikhism, Baba Guru Nanak. PM Khan said Sikhs from across the world can come and get both a religious and worldly education from this institution. He said the institute will also serve as a community center. US Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad has briefed Afghanistan's President Ashraf Ghani on the revival of the Afghan peace talks. Ghani's spokesperson Siddiq Siddiqui says the two leaders exchanged views on possible ways forward for peace in the war-torn country. Khalilzad arrived in Kabul on Sunday to meet the country's leadership in an attempt to restart talks with the Taliban. The US Embassy in Kabul has made no comments on Khalilzad's visit. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his main rival Benny Gantz have opened a new round of unity talks to end a political stalemate. It is the first round of direct talks since Netanyahu gave up on his push for a fourth term as Prime Minister. President Reuven Rivlin tasked Gantz to form a government by next month. Rivlin has promised to do all he can to prevent a third election since April. Israel has been paralyzed by the political deadlock following an inconclusive election last month. Earlier, Gantz's Blue and White Party said it will not enter government with the Likud party, while Netanyahu is their leader. In Argentina, center-left opposition candidate Alberto Fernandez has won the presidential elections. Official results show Fernandez won 48% of the vote, crossing the threshold for the outright victory. President Mauricio Macri is trailing second on 40% of the vote. Fernandez's win also caps a remarkable political comeback for his running mate, ex-President Cristina Kirchner, who will be his vice president. Fernandez says he will collaborate with Macri to pull Argentina out of its economic turmoil. Chile's President Sebastián Piñera has lifted a week-long state of emergency after mass protests. Authorities imposed the state of emergency and a curfew last weekend after Chile was rocked by the worst civil unrest seen in the country in decades. In a statement, Piñera said he has pulled back 20,000 soldiers and police to restore institutional normality. Meanwhile, demonstrations in the capital Santiago continued regardless. Last week, over 1 million people took to the country's streets demanding economic and political change. South Korea says it wants to talk with North Korea to defuse the dispute over the Mount Kumgang resort. Mount Kumgang sits on the northeastern coast, just north of the heavily fortified border separating the two Koreas. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un earlier said he wanted what he called the shabby and capitalist structure removed and rebuilt. Seoul's Unification Ministry has warned against the unilateral demolition of the site, saying it would damage inter-Korean ties. The ministry added it has asked the North to hold a working-level meeting to discuss the issue. A refrigerated truck carrying 8 Afghan migrants who had almost frozen to death has been found in France. Earlier, 39 migrants were found dead in a refrigerated lorry in England last week. French authorities found the truck parked in the northern port city of Calais. 4 Afghan adults and as many children were taken to the hospital for treatment after showing signs of hypothermia. The vehicle was driven into a ferry headed for the UK when authorities discovered people hiding in a section of the truck. Now moving on to Myanmar, where the army says it has rescued 14 hostages kidnapped by rebels in the country's restive Rakhine state. The rebel Arakan army kidnapped 50 soldiers and policemen after seizing a ferry yesterday. The Arakan army says many hostages were killed during the rescue operation. The rebels accuse the military of opening fire with machine guns and helicopters, killing the hostages. Rejecting rebel claims, Myanmar's army said the rebels used hostages as human shields. An oil spill in a river in southeast Bangladesh has threatened the breeding ground of the critically endangered Ganges dolphin. The officials say a tanker carrying 12,000 tons of diesel collided with another ship on the Karanapuli River, spilling the fuel. Environmentalists say the spill poses a serious threat to 60 freshwater dolphins who use the area as their breeding ground. In the past 4 years, 20 dolphins have already died unnaturally in Bangladesh's Karanapuli and Halda rivers. The air quality in India's capital, New Delhi, has plummeted following a night of fireworks for Diwali celebrations. The smog has disturbed the daily lives of New Delhi's residents as they cannot carry on their normal activities.
Toxic smoke and ash from firecrackers filled the air as the overall air quality index crossed severe mark in the city. Government data recorded air quality of the city at 460 today, making it extremely dangerous to breathe.
People burst a lot of crackers yesterday, the results of which we are bearing today this morning. You won't believe that we were here since 5 in the morning and we had not brought masks, but we especially bought masks from the shop so that we can save ourselves from the pollution by wearing masks.
Every winter, Delhi is wrapped in a nauseous blend of smog from car fumes and industrial emissions, making it one of the world's most polluted cities.
Over 180 people have been told to evacuate Northern California as strong winds and dry weather exacerbate ongoing wildfires. California's Governor Gavin Newsom has declared a statewide emergency. The Department of Forestry and Fire Protection says it has been able to contain only 10% of the blaze so far. Officials say the fires grew by almost 4,000 acres overnight to 30,000 acres and has destroyed 79 structures. A long-lost painting by the 13th century Italian master Envoy has been sold for $26 million at an auction in France. The painting was found in the kitchen of an elderly French woman before being auctioned.
The tiny painting, measuring just 20 by 26 centimeters, is believed to be part of a diptych consisting of 8 small panels. The auction house did not reveal the identity of the bidder, but said a foreign museum was among the bidders.
It was the sale of all possibles, meaning an immense painter, Simbao, and a unique work of art. There are no others from that point on. Anyone who wanted a Simbao painting today was ready for anything.
The painting by early Renaissance artist Cimabue, discovered earlier this year, was valued at $6.6 million.
Obviously, we knew that our estimation had some potential, but already at 10 to 12 million, we were immensely happy, and to finish at over 24 million is more than we could have dreamed of.
Born in Florence, Cimabue was a pioneering Italian primitive painter, of whom only about 10 known works have survived.
More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned with the listeners. And now the business updates. The IMF says unemployment and weak economic growth are fueling social unrest and protests in several Arab countries. Earlier this month, the IMF lowered the 2019 growth forecast for the Arab countries to 0.1% from 1.1% last year. The IMF's regional director, Jihad Azou, said growing protests are affecting the Middle Eastern and North African regions. He said public debt levels were very high in many Arab countries, exceeding 85% of GDP on average.
The level of growth that countries of the region are having is below what is needed to address the unemployment. We are in a region where the level of unemployment at the youth level exceeds 25 to 30%, and this requires growth to be higher by 1 or 2%.
And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you may follow us on social media at Indus Special.